If you've logged in recently, you might have been asked to create a passkey. Did you do it? More and more companies are offering people the option of using passkeys instead of passwords. I'm Joel McConvey, and today on the Biometric Update podcast, Rew Islam, Director of Product Engineering and Innovation for Dashlane, walks us through the Dashlane Passkey Power 20, a one-of-a-kind look at the apps leading the move to passwordless. So we are here today to talk about the Dashlane Power 20. This is a ranking of the top apps leading the move to passwordless across consumer and enterprise environments globally. It's really about the people who are pushing passkey adoption. And I'd like to start by asking you, Rew, please, to just walk us through the report a little bit. Give us an overview of who's on it and why, who are the leaders and trailblazers, who are we seeing really driving passkey adoption at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the second year we've run this report, and I would say the top companies that are doing really aggressive sort of passkey usage would be companies like Amazon. So a lot of e-commerce, is funneled through Amazon. Your account at Amazon is a sensitive account. You don't want that taken over, so passkeys really protect that. The ease of accessing that account, how easy is it to log into Amazon? That's the time between your ability to purchase something, so that you can understand why Amazon find it very important to adopt passkeys. And we also have companies like Google who have a lot of online services to protect. And losing access to your Google account could be essentially losing access to your online life. So yeah, Amazon and Google I would rank as the top sites. We've also had very fast growing sites like Roblox. If anyone has kids, you will know how addictive Roblox is. Within this gaming platform, which is designed for young folks, there is some sort of monetary system. So I think they're called Robux. So you can imagine there's a lot of opportunity for people to have their accounts stolen, especially if there's money involved. And kids are not the best at coming up with great passwords, but they do adapt to new technologies. So Roblox has seen massive growth since they rolled out passkeys. And then we have other companies or organizations that you may not expect, like the German state is pushing passkeys because they looked at the adoption of passkeys, they looked at the standard, they looked at the value of it, and they think, yeah, this is the right thing to do. This is how we get rid of the flaws or the problems we get with passwords.
Interesting. Just looking at one of these charts here, the share of most total authentications, and down the bottom, you've got organizations like Home Depot and Target, so retail organizations, and that's they're not a huge chunk of the pie, but it's interesting. You wouldn't expect maybe to see Home Depot on a list of passkey adopters.
Yeah, I think anytime you have an account, especially if you have an e-commerce site, what's the friction between your user wanting to purchase something? Where is the friction? And the friction with passwords is authentication. It's people forgetting their password. Maybe people are in the habit of clicking "forgot my password" every time. Well, then they have to depend on the email service to deliver that email, and then click that link, generate a new password. So a lot of hoops there. Where if you can remove that friction and make it safer, then for e-commerce, they will see a business upside to adopting passkeys. It's not all organizations will see a business upside. They'll, some organizations might be interested in the security aspect of things, but getting that, time to log in down to as short as possible is obviously very interesting for e-commerce sites.
This is a good time to tell you my story. I recently tried to purchase tickets with Ticketmaster, and it's the pop up came and said, create a passkey. But I'm one of those guys who basically just resets his password every time. Now, it's time consuming, it's irritating, but I do it. And I thought, okay, I'll try this passkey. And the first thing it asked me was, what's your password? And so obviously, once I had recovered a password, then I'm logged in and I'm not going to take the time to create the passkey, especially in a time sensitive situation. So, do you think that in terms of getting users to adopt passkeys on these platforms, there is still a trick to be found in terms of timing or engagement, how you sort of like prompt someone to pick up on this technology?
I think this is a good time to talk about the FIDO Alliance, and some of the listeners might be wondering, what is the FIDO Alliance? What is it? What's the relationship with Passkeys? FIDO Alliance is a standards body, just like many other standards body. If you have a socket in your home, that's a standard. If you plug in with USB devices, that's a standard. And there are organizations that organize the standard around those technologies. So the FIDO Alliance is looking to get rid of the problems of passwords, and passkeys are some of the outcomes of years of work within the FIDO Alliance. So what you're describing is exactly the kind of things the members of the FIDO Alliance, which includes Dashlane and all the typical tech companies you can imagine, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and others, they are watching the adoption of passkeys, learning about the friction points, and then evolving the technologies. So it's not as if Passkeys is done. The standard is not, baked and finished and that's it. It's, there's a version 1, there's a version 2, there's updates. So one thing that has come out of this exact conversation is, how can we get, for the companies that want easier adoption of Passkeys, how can that be done? There is automatic ways of Passkeys getting created. And we have seen some companies, I believe eBay may be one of those, that has adopted this, where the company will propose the user won't see this, under the hood they'll propose through the system that they would prefer an automatic passkey if the user's logging in with a password. And if the credential manager, whether that's Apple Passwords, Google Password Manager, or Dashlane, or another third-party provider, supports that functionality, then the passkey will be generated. The user won't have to go into an experience where they're like, create the passkey. It will be created for them under very particular circumstances. So there is work to, smooth over the rough edges, and adoption is one of those rough edges. Roblox has obviously seen a great increase in their passkey support, but they have a very particular audience. Other companies may not have that type of audience, like yourself. If you're hitting that forget password link every time, there's an audience out there that's doing that. And some companies may have an audience that's only doing that. So if they throw a password screen in front of those users, obviously they're going to have friction points. So I think the technology is changing or adapting to these problems, but I think companies are also going to adapt their flows. They're going to deploying passkeys is not just like turning a switch on. It's learning about your user base and their behaviors and adapting. So we're going to see changes through over time. The incentives are there to pull these companies towards adopting passkeys, so they'll figure it out as they go through this. So yeah, there's updates coming down the pipeline around adoption, which I think will help.
And I will put this same question to Andrew from FIDO Alliance when I speak to him next week. But can you tell me a bit more? I mean, our readers are relatively familiar with FIDO and with passkeys, but as a member of the FIDO Alliance, Dashlane, what's that relationship like? How do you interact with the Alliance? What kind of support do they provide?
Yeah, this is a great question. The Alliance is the members. So it is the collection of members and what they do when they get together, whether it's in the working groups, whether it's at the very recent Authenticate conference that took place, which is their annual conference. It's how the members interact together. And honestly, for me, this is the first time I participated in a standards body. It's been quite impressive to see how open everyone is to moving this stuff forward. There's a very welcoming environment for companies that are interested in pushing this technology forward to share what they've discovered in their own organization, friction points they've come across, develop new ideas. We've been some of your listeners may have heard of credential exchange. How do you safely transfer passkeys from one provider to another if you wanted to? That was something we worked on very intensively with other members of the FIDO Alliance. So that collaboration, the way I I've said this to Andrew at Fido. What I think Fido does really well is create the environment where these potential competitors can get together and develop things that help the whole industry. Maybe that happens elsewhere, but I've not come across it before, and I think it's really really great what the Alliance has created here. It's really that, how do you get the right people from the right organizations talking to each other so that good things happen? It sounds a bit wishy-washy, but that's how I would describe the FIDO Alliance.
I want to go back to your point about standards changing and evolving. This is something that we see in the age assurance debate. People expect something to be perfect out of the gate. And if there are imperfections, then the tendency is to want to throw it in the bin. Now, standards, again, are sort of by definition an ongoing project. They get revised and updated. So how do you convince people that this technology is the way? And I guess more so, do you think there's a danger that eventually Passkeys' moment will be over and it'll be past, and the next thing will come and to replace passwords as the authentication technology of choice?
I'm biased. I'm in the FIDO Alliance. I'm very much, Dashlane was the first company to adopt Passkeys to a certain point. We have been very active in the credential exchange work. We are all in on passwordless. So you're asking a question to someone who's very biased on this topic. I would say the momentum is very high right now. I'm struggling to see that momentum falter. I'm struggling to see that momentum, go the other way. I think some very problematic things would have to happen, and I don't know exactly what they are, for this to lose steam at this stage. The incentives, such as, let's say, if companies are relying on SMS OTP, that's a cost to their business. Removing that cost is a great incentive. Roblox, I think they reported something like 15% reduction in account takeovers. Well, that's a huge incentive to adopt passkeys. Retention of users, just simple retention numbers are increasing. So the business incentives are there. What you mentioned earlier regarding standards and adoption and the improvements in the standards, what I would say on that is standards only can do so much. At the end of the day, certain companies, let's say the platforms, password managers, have to implement them, and have to implement them in the way they see fit in terms of UI, in terms of user experience. So there is a variability in terms of how different companies adapt to or adopt passkeys into their products. The standards can only do so much. Standards don't define what the UI looks like. Standards don't define what the text on those popovers look like or read. So that is all variable, but the fact that it's variable means these companies are also incentivized to improve them. If things don't work out, they will improve them. And everyone, at least I've seen involved in the FIDO Alliance, are absolutely in the mindset of, if something's not working, let's improve it. So even if people, there's a lot of articles being written about passkeys over the last couple of years, a lot of hot takes, a lot of, negative takes perhaps. Sometimes it's about the difficulty of using passkeys. That is being heard. And that's being heard by all the members of the FIDO Alliance, and they're incentivized to make the pain go away. So I think not only will the standards evolve, but also the implementation of those standards will evolve over time.
You talked about the business case. Can you tell me a bit more about the kind of economic argument for passkeys?
Absolutely. Any, let's say, SaaS product or online company will have like a funnel. They advertise their product, they get so many people to click their advert or learn about their product, and then typically they have to create that first account. And that's the first step down in terms of how that funnel narrows. Some people are just going to find it problematic to create that account. If they're asked to enter a password and the password rules are complex, maybe they'll give up. Or even if they do create a password and the next time they log in, they might have forgotten their password and they just don't want to deal with the hassle. It depends on the service. How much do they value your service? If they don't value it very highly, they're not going to have a lot of motivation to maintain their access to your service. Passkeys just eases all of that because the user essentially is using the platform they're on to look after that credential that they don't see. It's just created in the background, as it were. And when they come back, the UI appears. They just have to typically do some sort of biometric. It doesn't have to be biometric. It might be a local device PIN or whatnot. But once they get used to that, once they start experiencing that with certain services, it won't be a surprise when another service starts using it. So I think the incentives are, how are you reducing friction to your account creation flows or login flows, and how does that improve your business? And I don't see any business where they're not interested in increasing those numbers. They obviously want more users. They want more happy users. They want fewer users contacting their user support centers. They want to be paying less on SMS OTP. So, there's a lot of business incentives, I think. And there's also, once the momentum gets to a certain point, so this is where it's really important to see companies like Amazon and Google adopt. There's a little bit of a sheep effect. You just follow what everyone else does. You say, well, how are they doing it? Why is it working for them? Oh, they're using passkeys. Okay, well, let's look into that. So I think that momentum will get to a point where it's just inevitable that using a password just will feel painful and detrimental to your business to a certain extent because your competitors will be doing it better.
So every tech kind of needs a boogeyman, every security tech anyway. And I was at a conference last year where someone from Ademia was talking about the quantum threat. Cryptography as we know it destroyed in one fell swoop. How is a company like Dashlane preparing for that? How is the FIDO Alliance as a collective dealing with that approaching potential threat?
Yes, this is a hot topic. This is a topic that gets discussed in the FIDO Alliance within Dashlane. I think right now, I don't think any company that's serious about cryptography, at least using the particular algorithms that are vulnerable to quantum computers, if they're worth their salt, they're looking into this. What most companies are waiting for is maybe standardization. We have algorithms, but which algorithms are potentially like misapproved or whatnot. So it's just a question of time. Apple released their 26th version of their OSs, and within the cryptography libraries, they included a couple of algorithms that were not there before, which are post-quantum algorithms. The main thing is whatever these products that do cryptography, whether it's Dashlane or anyone else, is your system agile to adopting a new algorithm? Do you need to completely refactor your code base, or can you just simply add a new algorithm? I think this is something, if you've been around long enough in this space, you've probably had to change your something within your cryptography stack. We did a major change some years ago, moving away from, let's say, PBKDF2 to Argon2, and it's not exactly the same thing, but it was some sort of cryptographic change. So we've built some muscle around adapting to new algorithms. So right now we have explored some algorithms. We have even shipped things in parallel to see how it works out. Now we're just waiting for a bit more standardization. The timeline, I think, people are saying 2030, 2035, that seems to be the window. I don't think it matters really when that window is, because you have things like store now, decrypt later type issues, where if an attacker was able to get hold of certain payloads, that those payloads may be valuable to them later when they're able to decrypt them. So it's not too late to start thinking about this. I think we're going to start seeing implementation. We've already started seeing, I think Signal, the messaging app, has already shipped some algorithms into their software. So I think in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to just hear more of that. Dashlane's working across all our client software regarding this. Like I say, we encrypt and decrypt vault data. That like symmetric encryption is not impacted by these risks. However, there are other areas of our software where we may perhaps share passwords using public key cryptography, and that those sort of algorithms need to be updated. So yeah, we're absolutely looking at it. Fido's looking at it, and the cryptographic agility is already built into the way WebAuthn and Passkeys work. So it's just a matter of time before we start to see those new algorithms come in place. Yubico actually demonstrated, I think, one of the algorithms in use using their hardware keys at Authenticate a few weeks ago. And obviously, with their hardware keys, the limitations are more difficult to work with than let's say fully fledged MacBook Pro with all the memory and CPU that you have. So these are positive signs. I think the right people are aware of the issues and they are looking into it and it's being worked on. I don't think it doesn't worry me that it's going to be too late. It doesn't worry me that very soon we're going to have these computers in existence. I'm happy with the work that's going on.
I'd like to get back to the report for a minute. Can you give me just sort of like some high level, let's say 3 takeaways that we obviously want people to go and read the report itself, but what should they be looking to learn from this, and what are some really kind of high level takeaways you can share with people?
3. Well, I have 2 that are clear in my mind. Maybe I'll think of a third. The first one is the evolution from the year before and the year before that. Like, it's crazy that Passkeys arrived in 2022, and 3 years down the road, we're seeing this level of adoption. Even the conversation at Authenticate was less about, hey, everyone, implement Passkeys, and much more about, this is how you get Passkeys to work better for you. The conversation's more complex. It's a level up. So the takeaway is I don't think the industry is at a point where we need arguments to convince companies to adopt Passkeys. Passkeys are being adopted. You will see more and more Passkeys in your daily online life. So that's the first takeaway, that Passkeys are here and they're just increasing. The momentum's rising. And the second takeaway is this is not, let's say, a tech company thing. It's not an Apple, Microsoft, Google, or Okta or Dashlane only thing. The types of organizations that are adopting Passkeys are quite varied, as you see in the list. And that is where it becomes interesting, because it's the long tail. People have between 200 and 300 passwords in their password manager, let's say. And there's a long tail of logins that need to move over to phishing resistance. To see varying companies adopt Passkeys is a good indication that will happen over time. It's just a matter of time. And so that's my second takeaway. It's not like something that's just happening in Silicon Valley. This is happening, like we saw in the German government, and also the UK government has pushed very hard towards Passkeys. There's something called the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK. They are rolling out Passkey support for almost everyone that uses the health service in the UK. So that's the second takeaway. The third takeaway I would say is that if you experience Passkeys just as you have described it, and you get a bad experience, I would not judge Passkeys by that experience. Firstly, because that's one service, and a different service will have a different experience. The second thing, as I mentioned earlier, these things are going to improve because everyone that's involved is incentivized to make sure that the experience is as good as it can be. So yeah, they're my 3 takeaways.
Very good. There's a natural relationship, because of the cryptographic element, with the sort of crypto industry, and with digital ID, for that matter, and people who are using these sort of decentralized models. What do you think is the relationship between sort of Passkeys and this sort of like cryptocurrency space, and also to the larger discussion about digital ID?
That is a great question. So I think there's two parts here, and I'll try to remember them and tackle them. The first one is, crypto wallets. Crypto wallets are very similar to password managers in that they have very sensitive data that they need to have zero knowledge over. They need to encrypt. Only the user needs to have access to that, and that involves encryption, decryption. Passkeys are authentication. It's about proving, verifying that you have the key. You're the right user to have access to this thing. There is, elements of the standard, like extensions we call them, that allow encryption and decryption. And this is actually something we talked about or released a few weeks ago. Like, how about you encrypt and decrypt the Dashlane vault, not with a master password, but with a YubiKey or any FIDO2 security key? So that starts becoming interesting now because you have the ability to entirely remove this password aspect to a zero knowledge service, and that could be a crypto wallet. So I think that's something we are pushing for at Dashlane. We're hoping that other companies also start adopting this. So companies that are really careful about the data they handle, if they encrypt it, that's going to be important. So yeah, I think that's a new aspect. I think I haven't seen a lot of evidence of that. I think WhatsApp does some of that. Dashlane has just released a version of the product that does that, and others are doing that, and we'll hopefully see more. Digital identity is a space that is going to change the world essentially. If you're an EU citizen, what's happening in the EU? Like every EU citizen, resident, and business will have the ability to have a digital form of their identity by the end of next year, which is huge. It's like 500 million people or so being able to interact with a level of trust online that just does not exist today. In the US, we're seeing DMV's driving licenses being digitized. Some states are ahead of others, but we're starting to see slowly, state by state, introduction of digital forms of their driving licenses. And the question is, where does FIDO fit into this? Well, the reality is, under the hood, there's a lot of technology that came out of developing passkeys that have a lot of parallels with digital credentials. So there's, there will be, and I believe this is, the direction things will take, where the same technologies are going to be used. You have this experience with passkeys where you have a QR code flow that people might be familiar with. It's called the cross-device authentication flow, where you use your mobile phone to authenticate using a passkey. Well, a lot of people are going to be storing those digital credentials for driving license or passports on their phone. And if you need to book into a hotel or book tickets or prove your identity, prove your perhaps that you're over 18 or over 21, it'll be exactly the same technology. That QR code will be based on the FIDO standard CTAP, which is client to authenticator protocol. So FIDO is very well placed to, let's say, have a dual use of all the healthy technology that's been built for passkeys over the years and bootstrap this new world of digital credentials that is going to be ushered in, or is actually being ushered in right now. We're going to see much more of that over the next 2 to 3 years. So yeah, there's a lot of overlap.
Europe is a huge driver there, obviously, with the wallet scheme. So it'd be interesting to see how that all rolls out by the end of 2026, I think is the deadline. Right?
Exactly.
So last question for you here. Yeah, we continually hear about the death of passwords. And I think if this was a boxing match, passwords have taken a beating, but they're kind of still standing. So how far into the fight are we? How close to a passwordless future have we gotten at this point?
Great question. And yeah, I mean, having worked with Dashlane for like 13 years or so, I've heard the death of the password many times. And in fact, one of the reasons why we went all in on passwordless is because we actually saw the writing on the wall. Like, if you're a password manager and passwords are going to go away in the future, then it's a bit of an existential issue there. How far are we into the fight? We're not done, obviously. I would say we're still early in that huge adoption. Like, we're seeing huge adoption to some services. We're not seeing huge adoption across the gamut of all the different services everyone needs to like just do things online. So I think that's that's the hill that we need to climb. It's all about how long and how far. I would say there are billions of accounts that can sign in with Passkeys. That's just a fact. If you look at those companies on that list, if you add up all their user bases, and if they push Passkeys, that's billions of accounts. It's not necessarily billions of users, but billions of accounts. I would say it's early. The momentum's good. It's difficult. I would say within the next 3 years, we'll be able to tell how far we can really go. But I really don't think it's going to be 10 years. I think it's really going to be like 2, 3, 5 years' time. The incentives are strong enough. I don't know if I answered your question fully. Maybe there's a bit pieces I've missed in what you've asked.
No, I think that answers it. I'm hearing passkeys in round 5. Probably after passwords have taken a strong lashing.
I'll just finish actually by saying phishing is the reason why passkeys are good for security.
Yep.
And phishing is not going away. If anything, phishing's got worse thanks to all these large language models and the effectiveness of the social engineering that can be done today versus prior to these AI things. So that is also hopefully, I'm not going to say it's a good thing that there's a lot of phishing, but it will be a driver to convince companies that if their services are suffering with phishing attacks, then passkeys are going to be one defense that they'll have against that. I think phishing's not going away. It's one of the most effective online attacks that we're experiencing. Everyone has a friend or family member who's been phished. They've experienced the pain of dealing with that, the hassle, and being able to say that just goes away as soon as you change the way you authenticate into a service. And we're not there yet, but that I think is one of the huge driving factors to this as well.
Thanks to Dashlane's Rew Islam for joining us today, and thanks to you for listening. For more on the Passkey Power 20, you can visit Dashlane's blog at dashlane.com. And for all the latest on biometrics and digital ID, be sure to visit www.biometricupdate.com.